today I have with me David. No, sorry, it's Mark. Mark Channon.
Hey,
Obviously, I'm
we're
joking.
off.
The legend, that is Mark Channon. He's been, he's pretty much the OG of memory. Him, Tony Buzan. You're obviously around the same age as Tony, aren't you? Or no, you're a bit younger, aren't
Bit
you?
younger. I mean, I'm in my 50s. Tony was about 20 years on
Only
me. So
joking. Yeah, so you've been doing it for a while, but also, as we've chatted about multiple times before, it's, you do memory and all of a sudden it sort of goes into so many other areas like productivity and all this sort of cool stuff. So we'll talk about all of that. But firstly, how are you, mate? How's everything going?
I'm buzzing. I just said just before we clicked record, I just said my kid's birthday was yesterday. I say kid, he's 20 years old now. He's not a kid. And so we got a day of Mario Kart, 96 tracks planned. So that's my day today. But outside of that, it's going good. Fingers, pies, lots of things going on. You obviously saw on LinkedIn, I was doing this kind of memory school thing. Had this idea. I say this idea, like you. I've been doing this memory game for a very long time. I think it's come up. It's over 30 years now. I think so. It's a while. But I've decided about 10 days ago to build this thing, memory school, in public. So, not knowing if zero people would even look at this thing or see where it goes. So it started to get some decent traction actually. So yeah, that's my focus right now, building that thing out. So we'll kind of see how it plays out. But it's often a very interesting start, shall we say.
Yeah, and I mean, you've been doing memory, like you said, for many, many years. What got you into it?
Why? So that's the question. You know what? It was a fluke. I don't know about you, but maybe you've got a similar story to me. But when I had a reputation, and when I say this, people usually go, "Yeah, you're making it up, right?" No, I had literally the worst memory. People used to make jokes about me. I actually forgot my own name once. That's not. I'm not even kidding. I forgot
Wow.
my own name. I was an actor, and I used to be Mark Wood, and I changed it to Mark Channon. This was like in my early 20s, and I was at this audition. It was a show called Crazy for You, and they were calling out my name, Mark Channon, Mark Channon,
Oh,
Mark
you
Channon.
were Mark Wood. Got
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yes.
And they were calling out my new name, which I'd had for about 3 months. And my mate shouted over, "Mark, that's you." I literally forgot that I'd changed my name. So I had a reputation for having the worst memory. And it was actually a good friend of mine. His name was Steve Rogers. He actually lives in Sydney. He's out in Australia.
Right.
And very energetic. He burst into the room one day. I was sleeping on his couch. And he said, "Mark, remember these 20 words." And he did a memory palace with me. I'd never done this before. It kind of blew my mind.
Yeah.
Before I did it, I memorized about 4 words. He gave me 20 words and I was rubbish. And then he shared the technique and I did 20 forwards and backwards. And I was like, whoa, what the hell is this stuff? So I just got into it. So that's how I got into it. And then I did that for about a year. I was working in a bar. I got into the show. My agent called me up, said, "You got any ideas for a game show?" I was an actor. I would never say no to anything. Desperate.
Mm.
Now, give me half an hour. Wrote a show, went out to 8 million people on the BBC, and that got me into the whole thing. It
Wow.
was it was luck, and I kind of got pulled into it. And obviously, like you, I kind of competed,
Mm.
but it wasn't really my was never my focus. I was much more interested. How do you use it in the real world? But I probably like you, right? Yeah, I was
Mm.
personal, professional life, and that's what really sparked it up for me. And I set up my first business at 23, went around the UK teaching people how to do this stuff. So it was good. How about you actually? How did you get into it? Because I don't actually know. You're
It's very similar, almost the exact same story. A friend of mine said, "Look, I can remember 20 random, objects, any order." And I thought, yeah, yeah, right, you can. I know who you are. So we used to be two guys playing guitar in metal bands. Like, who the hell are you going to remember all these
did you
words?
have long
Anyway,
hair?
no, I no, my hair was growing up that way, but he had long hair. So I had to test him. So I tested him, and he got all the words right. I'm thinking he didn't write anything or had anything up his sleeves. I'm like, "How did you do it?" He said, "Oh, it's just memory techniques." I'm like, "What are you talking? Where did you get it?" He goes, "I got it from a book." And I said, well, "Which book?" And he said, "I don't know. I can't remember." I'm like, "You idiot!" So he couldn't remember the book title. He remembered the author, which was Tony Buzan. So I went and bought Master Your Memory, and I read halfway through. I said, "Look, it's not working. What's going on?" Apparently it was, improve your memory, not use your memory. Sorry, not master your memory. So I went back and read that. I'm like, that's how it works, and it was just insane from there. But again, a friend sort of testing that's very similar to yours as
Yeah.
well. And then it was freaky how the techniques worked, and the more and more you did it, it's like, what? You can remember cards, you can names. What? I was worse at that. You're saying you're forgetting your name. I used to make up fake coffee names and even forget them after a while. So, my favorite was Vijay Nanganamachandran, guy I used to work with. So people, used to just laugh at me when I said that. But yeah, that's my story as well. Everyone's got quite a funny story getting in, but people think that we're
Yeah.
born with it, right? They look at you and go,
Not at
"Man, this
all.
guy's just so good, super memory." And unfortunately, the media loves to play it up as well. When they're either interviewing us or when they see us on TV, they pump up this almost like a magician. Because remember,
And
magicians
it's
are
like,
sort of,
don't screw this one up.
yeah, yeah,
I remember I went into one of the morning shows this morning over here in the UK, and they said, "Oh, Mark, come in, memorize 50 people and what they do." I went, "Okay." I said, "I'd much rather like work with someone, and then you can see how it works with someone who's never done it." And they went, "Yeah, but come in and do this." I'm like, "All right, okay," like you do. And I memorized everyone, but then, and actually, this goes back to probably the real problem I had when I was young. My memory was actually pretty good memorizing lines, but my focus was in the dogs. I mean, it was everywhere. Once I cracked that, everything kind of changed. But I remember I was in the studio, this live TV show. I'm sitting on the couch off camera, and I suddenly got a massive wave of anxiety. It never happened to me. I've been in TV on and off for like 30 years. And I thought, what is happening? Your lip starts to go. I could feel the trembling happening. I forgot everyone. I thought, oh no, this is it, the end of my career. It's about 5 years ago, maybe. I thought, that's it, shot. What is going to be bombed? And I have this little technique. And it's just a little strategy where whenever you feel that level of anxiety, is just quickly divert your attention to the mundane. And so all I did was, in the first kind of 10 seconds as this came up, is I just grabbed a spot on the sofa, and I looked at it, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. What does that remind me of? And it reminded me of my granny's house when I was a kid. All of a sudden, a different emotion started to get connected up there. Took a few breaths, it all subsided. I remember all the memories started to come back, went on, everything went fine. But it's really interesting. What I realized is when I was younger, the challenges were more with, let's say, moments of anxiety, even panic, and lack of focus. You crack those, and people don't always associate these things, especially with what we do.
Yeah.
Because you've got the memory strategies part of what we do, the memory techniques, the palaces, the chains, and the creative aspect to it. But the other mindset part I've seen is just as important, if not more important. In fact, start there, the other stuff gets way easier. I don't know what your take is on that.
Oh, look, I totally agree because, and it's funny how you pick this up after you do memory techniques, because the memory techniques that taught me, I used to have travel anxiety, a really bad travel anxiety because I've got Crohn's disease, which, almost put me away when I was 23 years old. I was in hospital in major surgery, and I had, staples down my chest all the way down, 31 of them. And it was at that time where I started training. And when I started, when I got a bit better, it was like, oh, I don't want to travel here and travel there. I would always be a lot of stress, or in a lot of stress. But when I was training memory, I realized it was storytelling, right? Making associations and all that sort of stuff. And the skill of storytelling went really well, right? I was creative. I enjoyed that process until I realized that anxiety is storytelling, right? Stress is storytelling. We're telling ourselves a story. So then I realized that, hang on, if I change this story, if I create a better story, and if I make that story weaker, the stress one, things may change. I practiced
Yeah.
that, and within 2 weeks, my travel anxiety went away, which was insane. And I'm like,
Yeah.
man, I got to share this with someone. And then just a couple of weeks ago, believe it or not, at my office here, someone came to me and said, look, they've got severe OCD, and they're washing. It takes about 3 hours washing themselves, and I showed them how to change their stories in their head, right? Pretty much similar to anxiety. And
Yeah.
they came to me thanking me just hours later, saying, "Oh my goodness, so you just helped me." So I'm like, "Yeah, you got to see a psych," but these little techniques still work. So
Yeah.
it's
And they
amazing
do.
what
And
you learn.
it really is. And I think it's a fantastic example of how memory, a better memory, is much more than, let's say, the technique aspect of it. And when you think of the implicit type of memories we have, it's essentially you've got what you're describing there as this kind of conditioned response. You've got the story that plays, it's conditioned to respond when you get triggered in a certain way. So all you have to do is play a different story. Play a different story, you feel a different way. Trigger that in and it all connects up. I remember I was working with a client, she was 63, her name was Jo, and she just failed the California bar exam. And apparently, I'd never done it, but it's one of the toughest exams in the world. And
Right.
she'd done some memory techniques before, and she came to me and she worked with me, and we looked at how we could dial up what she was doing from a memory aspect. But actually, the biggest problem was what she believed about her whole memory. She was like, "I'm a complete scatterbrain. I can't memorize everything." And when we actually did the work, I was like, "Jo, you're amazing. What's actually going on here?" It turned out it was just the belief.
Yeah.
Like you said, it was a story she was telling herself about her memory. As soon as we switched that, game changer. She went and did the exam. On the day, everything went wrong. The electricity went out. The actor then, everyone was panicking. Jo, cool as a cucumber. She was like, "Nah, I know I did." She passed, one of the 39% that passed that year. But you've probably seen this as well. There's lots of stories like that you see over the years. And I think once you get that mindset stuff working, you combine that with some really effective strategies, and then you connect that with how it shows up in a person's life. Boom. And now you start to figure out how you use it.
I think that's such a cool approach, because, as you know, as a coach, one of the key things that we do is we have to diagnose first. It's not like I just need to remember names. Okay, here are the techniques. It doesn't go like that. I had one CEO come to me saying, "Look, I want to remember names," but it turned out after my diagnosis that he was lacking in confidence, and no one would have ever known because it was such a huge figure in the organization. So that diagnosis, once you figure out, oh, it's the stories in the head, and you fix that, suddenly their memory's better. How does that happen? Right? So it's an amazing thing to be able to do that. And you've obviously delved into so many cool areas like productivity, for example. Has this been sort of a branch that stemmed through all your work in memory as well? Or is it sort of inspired from other areas similar?
It comes from two areas. Memory, without a doubt, is one, because memory, focus. If you drew a Venn diagram, you probably have memory, productivity on the other side, and what combines the both together is your ability to focus. So at least one of them. Making that Venn diagram off the spot, so maybe there's some inaccuracies there, right? But there's a model there. The other thing was, I guess, my acting career. So I was an actor for 15 years, and I tell that story a lot, but I was always very playful in my approach to just life, I guess. I never took things too seriously, but I was professional. And I remember working with Sir Ian McKellen. This is in 1997, National Theatre. It was Peter Pan. He was Hook. I was one of the Lost Boys. And, so lucky enough to share the stage with this guy. It's like the Olivier stage, National Theatre. So it was when I was on, I kind of grew in my career and ended up doing some pretty decent stuff later on. But when you watch someone like McKellen work, and you really pay attention to how he operates, there was two things that stood out. He was super playful. And with that becomes curiosity, becomes an openness. There's not a lot of judgment there. for someone working with him who's like, oh, this is Sir Ian McKellen,
Mm.
it makes you let go of any stress or anxiety. You get to play. And it was one of the most powerful like leadership strategies I've ever seen, that playfulness. But what he also had was he was a professional in the true sense of what I think a pro. Whenever when an actor world, we go, oh, they're a pro. What it really means is the craft, the quality of the craft is just so high. The bar is so high, but they don't take it too seriously either. And they continuously work on the craft. And for me, you combine those two things, and it's a bit of a game changer. And so the acting world really influenced a lot of my approach to how I operate or how I work with people. And obviously, I did a lot of coaching as well. I kind of studied coaching and trained and all that stuff. And so just how do you actually work with people? So I think those three worlds combined, the memory world, the acting world, and the coaching world, you bring that together, and it's kind of formed my approach to how I kind of work with people. And it's kind of infiltrated everything I do. But you know what? I still think of myself as an actor. I haven't acted in 20 years. If you ask me, hey, sometimes I'll almost say it. People say, what do you do? I go, I'm an actor. No, I'm not an actor. I'm not acting anymore. But it's still like inside how I operate. I always feel I'm an actor because I like to be playful.
Yeah, I love what you said there, because there's two things going on, right? There's the learning side, and the learning side. What generally happens if people want to learn about memory or learn about acting or learn something, it's great, it's fun up until a certain point, because learning can get stressful. And what happens is that if it gets stressful, releases cortisol in the brain, and people only get up to a certain point, right? However, if you're playing a game, right, what happens is that you want to keep playing the game, and that doesn't increase cortisol, that increases dopamine, right? And that's what happened to me. I didn't learn memory. I didn't read all these books and stuff, and I only read like half a book. All I did, just like yourself, I played the memory games. I memorized the cards, the numbers and stuff, and I kept doing that more and more and more, and my memory got up to a high level, right? And because it went up to a high level, now it's like when I went to do stuff like learn a language or pass an exam or whatever, it was peanuts. Like I didn't have to do all the hard work. It's like I just exercised my brain to a point, and I did it without barely any effort because I enjoyed doing it. So play is such a huge, it's not even, you don't even need motivation. It's like it can become a habit if you keep doing it, and it helps you in so many different areas. So I love that about yourself, and what you've developed in yourself is something quite unique. No one can copy it, and you've got that unique point of, now I've got the play, I've got the productivity, I've got everything else combined. This is me, and here's what I'm offering. And when people see that, they experience it, it's life-changing. And I'm sure you would have, seen so many transformations in your years, just from, being who you are, which is the best thing and instead of trying to being someone else.
Yeah. And, there's two things in there that stands out. One, what you just said there, just being yourself, because that's all you can really be, and taking your own experiences and sharing that. And because that means that whoever you work with gets a different kind of insight. But also I love that idea of, I'm going to paraphrase, but you actually did do the hard work, but it felt like play. And then you were able to apply it. But it was like, I didn't have to do the hard work because it didn't feel like it.
Yeah.
I often refer to the Kobayashi Maru because I'm a bit of a geek, right? Star Trek, Captain Kirk. Have you seen that?
No. Sorry, Trekkie fans.
Yeah. That's so. I mean, look, I've got 3 boys, so I can get away with it. It's Kobayashi Maru. So it's the idea that Captain Kirk, there's one, let's say, situation they put you in as a captain where they set you up to fail. Like you must fail this, and it teaches you how to fail. But obviously it's Captain Kirk. He's not going to fail. So he switches the game. He changes the game so he cannot fail. So he's the only person ever to beat the Kobayashi Maru. But actually there's a real lesson to life in there. Change the game. You can either change the game or change how you think about the game. So either you feel differently about the game, so that means it doesn't feel like hard work, or you just change what the game is. And now you're going to feel differently about it. So I love that kind of idea you were saying about it's the game. And whenever I'm working with anyone, let's say even if it's out of memory, some like you, someone's going through some kind of anxiety or confidence, it's more about how do you change the game for this? How do you either feel differently about it? What will need to happen in terms of, you mentioned before, your narrative, or how do you change the thing itself? Or even better still, how do you change the narrative while you change the game? Do those two things and you feel good while you grow, while you shift. And I think that's like, I mean, that idea probably comes from not my head, but other people I've listened to over the years, and it's kind of been absorbed into my brain. I always think there's never really any new ideas, but you do develop over older ideas or old problems, and you come up with maybe your own take on it.
Yeah, I mean, what we're doing is not new, right? But we're synthesizing
2,000 years,
information.
right?
We're learning, we're synthesizing, and we're communicating it in a way that hopefully changes people's lives. I mean, that's what we're doing. And I don't know if I told you this, but I do a thing with my clients where I have failure training, and I do what you said, but I make sure that they fail in every instance. And the reason why I do that is so they can just analyze the data and say, okay, why did I fail here? Why did I fail here? And there's never a point where they ever pass it, So I
I
love
like
that. It's
that.
stressful
That's
for
great.
them. It's fun for me, right? But it gives them good data. And I try to say that up front so they don't end up disowning me afterwards. But yeah, the whole point is putting them under so much stress load that they can't get to a certain point. And then in order to get somewhere you've never been, you've got to do something you've never done, right? So
Yeah.
now they're thinking outside the box and all these sort of things. So it's a really good exercise. But I love what you said about changing the game. I've never thought of it that way. So that's really cool.
Yeah, it's very nice. It's very nice. Brilliant. Um, yeah. So what else? What else are you? What else are you working on right now?
So at the moment, I mean, as you know or may not know, I run TEDx events here, and Anthony Mativia, I invited him to speak at one of them as well. So I'm constantly looking at speakers, constantly looking at ways to introduce certain topics and certain ideas out there to the world. So I'm working on that. I'm obviously doing all the memory stuff, but I've left coaching after 22 years.
I
I've left
saw
it.
you post about that actually. I wanted to ask. Tell me about
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So I've sort of changed. I've done a little bit of a pivot. Instead of doing coaching, which is helping people to grow and all that sort of stuff, I'm doing more training, the gamification stuff, all the game stuff, right? So all I'm doing is playing games with people to make sure that they get to a higher level, and then whenever they want to do all the other things, it's like I don't coach them through it, but I give more advice and get them to achieve it on their own rather than me. So I become sort of like a mentor at the end. But I just thought,
Very nice.
what, there's going to be, I changed the game for me personally. I just thought, I can't keep doing coaching. It's sometimes coaching takes a long time. And for me, it's like, I need to work on other projects. Let's do it so that I don't have to meet with people that often, give them the skills that they can. Let's have a bit of a party. Let's have a game, because I like that personally. And then see the growth from there, and then help them from far, and let them grow by themselves. So that's been amazing, because now I can just focus on my specialty of what connects. And I love strategizing and all this gamification. I even train athletes now, memory athletes. And for me,
Very
that's
nice.
that's I love it, because it's not so much about, oh yeah, memorize playing cards in 30 seconds or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's all about, well, how can you, like all the stuff ups that's going on in your head, how can you get to a point where you're not just fully focusing, but doing what you need to do and this thing at the same time, So there's so many, and, doing the failure training, the success training, like that's the opposite of the failure training, where they have to get 100% 20 times in a row. Otherwise they start from the start, so all these little exercises, and it's all built for gaining data. So I'm like the chat GPT essentially, they give me all the data, I analyze that data, and then I feed it back to them. I've even put that data into chat GPT. It still wasn't good enough, but it's getting better and better. So you never
It's
know
getting
what can
better.
happen.
It is getting
It's
better.
definitely getting better.
And it sounds like that approach, you're telling me this is right. There's a very clear goal then for the people that you're working with. And so if you're getting that data back, you can measure that progress is transparent. It's observed, it can be seen, which is, I've always found, tracking, particularly in coaching, any kind of coaching, is a real motivator. It's just like the leaderboard, isn't it? We get back to games again. Game theory.
Exactly like, okay, right.
This is where you want to get to. This is where you want to win, and now you can see what's going on. And the great thing about a game, and why I love the metaphor, is that, and you see it with the kids that are playing games, you get killed, you lose a life, you don't beat yourself up with this, oh, damn, what's happened? Well, sometimes you do, right? But then you get right back on it. You're motivated. You go, right, I'm going to get past this level. Yeah. And that doesn't always show up for people in life. No. They hit a barrier, they get blocked, and they go, oh, I'm just not good at this. It's not how I work. It's not how my brain operates. You've only tried it a couple of times. How do you really know?
It's exactly. And sometimes I say to people, look, you've only tried it, 70 times. And sometimes it needs more data. And people think that, okay, I've tried it once or twice or 10 times. Now it's not working for me. Well, how did you try it? How are you feeling? Into what environment? So there's so many points of data. And what inspired me was when I was playing Halo with my son, right? Video game back in the day. And he would have been about 4. And he picked the easy level. I'm like, come on, dude, what are you doing? The easy level, come on. So he puts it to, hard. I'm like, put it to legendary. So we went to legendary mode and we were just dying within seconds, we weren't that good. But what happened after a while, because he was getting frustrated, I was getting frustrated, was that, okay, let's strategize. Let's think for a moment. How are we going to beat this thing? And eventually after 4 hours, we got there. But what I learned was, building strategies, communication, just stretching your mind to think in different ways. And I thought, wow, this is amazing to actually take something that's really hard that you're never going to try and actually give it a go, because you're going to think in ways that you never thought before. And I thought, wow, this will go nicely in my coaching. So that's what I eventually did. And the data it's very useful because, as a coach, and you're probably the same, it's not good to just say, okay, I want you to feel good. And that's it. Feeling is great, but it's not a metric really to say you've improved. Whereas if you
can't force a feeling.
Exactly.
You can't force a feeling. I learned that as an actor. If you want to produce an emotion, the last thing you can do is try to produce an emotion. What you have to do is create an experience in your mind. And if it's the right experience, that emotion is going to come flooding out, whether you're breaking down in tears, whether you're laughing. And life is no different. You can't create that. What I love about that story you're telling there as well is that, again, you're putting yourself in a situation. It feels almost impossible. You're pushing yourself hard, but again, implicitly it's playful, which allows you to think optimistically about something. You don't get stuck. This is never going to work. No, how do we get it done? You talk to yourself in a different way. Yeah. What an amazing mindset to have. Because you approach things with that. It doesn't matter how you feel 100 times, you're going to keep on going.
Yeah.
I always think, I was quite physical when I was, I guess maybe I still am. I'm in my 50s now, but when I was young, I was very physical. I started tap dancing when I was 6 years old. So I did loads of tap dancing musicals in the West End. I did Singing in the Rain, and I played the Donald O'Connor part in that. So I had to learn at 28 how to somersault off a wall. It landed on my head many, many times. But when it comes to something like, let's say, tap dancing, and I think what I learned very, very young, like when I was 6 years old when I started, is that you have to learn the basics. If you want to get good at something, any skill, it does not happen. There's no magic bullets. Nothing happens without putting the effort in. But you practice a shuffle, and I'd practice shuffles literally for years until I was really good at doing shuffles. And then you do, different kind of beats, and I got into the American tap, and all of a sudden you were able to listen to a sound, you can tap without even thinking about it. And that maybe takes 20 years before you get to that point where you can actually just like hoof. You hear a rhythm and you go bam, 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 and you're dancing off that. And I think like any skill, I see it as the same way. Memory techniques is so similar. You have to do the basics, right? And you get good at the basics. I'm a big fan of finding out where almost immediately you can see some real world value. You know, whether that's remembering like 5 things someone says in a conversation and locking it in, because that's like relatively easy. And then what you find is over time, it becomes more implicit. And you'll have experienced this. You said it before. It's like you practice this stuff so much that when I coach, I never write down any notes. I just, in my memory palettes, I just throw down key points people are saying, and I'll play it back. And that will allow me to be super present, go into this deep listening mode. Now, afterwards, I just dictate it, throw it into ChatGPT, go write this up for me. Boom, done. Like super effective.
Yeah, it's amazing what could be done on that thing, because yeah, you can add those notes. You can say, "Oh, turn this into a LinkedIn post," or write a YouTube script, or it's just unbelievable. I mean, as you know, I'm on YouTube, and what I do for people watching, you can listen to this, is I get the transcript from YouTube, put it to ChatGPT, write a LinkedIn post. It writes the cheesiest thing, so I end up changing most of it. But then I pop that on, so I don't have to really worry about LinkedIn these days. And a lot of it is, it's amazing. And you found a lot of good usages for AI. Tell me about, memory school. I'm interested in that. I know you're going to do, productivity school, all of that stuff, but whatever you can tell me thus far, because he has been public for what I know. So yeah, tell us about the memory school.
So it really stems back to the very beginning, why I started. And why I started after the game show, this was in 1995 on the BBC. When I started working with people I didn't know whether this stuff actually worked in the real world. And there was 2 people that came along to my first seminar I ever did. One was called Beth, one was called Hermione. I remember them because they wrote me letters. And it was the day of letters. So no internet, right? Wow. I mean, it kind of existed, but no one was emailing. And I got these letters maybe between 4 and 6 weeks after the event. And Beth, and the way I used to run my seminars is day 1, I'm going to teach you a bunch of techniques. Day 2, there's no agenda. It's a free-for-all. You rock up. You bring your goal. You bring the things you want to change in your life, and we'll work it out. You'll work in groups. You'll self-learn as a group, and then I will come in and facilitate when you get blocked. I just made that. I didn't know whether that was going to work. I was 23 years old. I was making it all up. Didn't have a clue, but it worked. Yeah. 6 weeks, I got these letters a few, weeks later, and Beth, she was doing acupuncture, and she was a corporate person, and she was feeling a bit burned out, and she wanted to set up as an acupuncturist. Great, but she'd failed the exam previously. Did the work. I showed her we kind of brainstormed some techniques together. She had a solution. She executed on it, got 100%. She wrote me back, and I was like, wow, you've probably seen loads of this, right? You'd be like, these great scores. But 100%, that initially blew my mind. I thought, wow, this stuff really does work. And then the biggest shift for me, though, was Hermione, because she was super quiet in the event. And I remember crystal clear, because at the end, she came up and she went, thank you. And I thought, she didn't have a good time. I thought, she isn't like this. But she wrote to me 6 weeks later, and I've still got letters somewhere, I think it's in the shed. And I'll paraphrase this, but she said, Mark, I just want to thank you for this, because I now feel a whole different level of confidence. I feel I can study and do anything that I want to do. I didn't feel that before. My kids are coming to me for homework. That has never happened. And my husband's seeing me in a whole different way. And I was like, wow. And genuinely, that moment flicked a switch in my head. And I thought, okay, I can't not share that stuff. And that's the last 30 years. But memory school really comes from that idea. Building a community, which kind of feels like that second day. It was like the kind of the initial where I kind of started my own journey and go, look, I want to create a community, but what I want to create is not just any community. I want to create, the highest quality memory community that exists on the planet. So, okay, that's a lot of world words there, right? But what it really means is that people self-learn. Yeah, I've got courses I'll put in there and do all that kind of stuff and facilitate, but it's more let's say a facilitation, and everything ties back to either your personal or your professional world. There has to be real world kind of stuff showing up in there. And while this is about memory, really we get into, you know, priming and flow and connection and retrieval, but it's a lot of the habits that you need to get into there as well. Obviously, one of my things is tiny habits. So, you know, habit design. And because lots of people start memory techniques, they don't know how to use them in the real world. They give up because they get zero value, and therefore, hey, it doesn't work for me. So that's why I'm creating Memory School. And I've spent the last 10 days, well, it's day 10 today, posting, or I'm building it in public. So 10 days ago, I had the idea.
I've been following. Yeah.
And I just created a video and, hey, I'm going to do this. I don't know if anyone's going to turn up, but you know that. And so I've been I've got like 20 customer interviews that I've set up. So this is me. I've got a product background as well, right? I was ex-BBC, ex-Microsoft, worked in a bunch of startups. So I've got a big tech background. So whenever I start creating something new, I always start with customers, problems, desires, jobs to be done. What are they using today? What works? What does it? All that kind of good stuff. And what I'm also doing as part of that is giving away 100 spots for free. So I'm giving away 100 spots, but there is some criteria that I've set to people. Look, you've got to show a good level of motivation. I've got a scorecard, which they have to take before they're considered for it. And then the second thing is just to engage in the community. Now I'm going to help people, give people easy ways to do this. And it's not like engage every day. It's nothing like that. But if you go quiet for a month and I don't see you, you're going to lose your spot. And so this is for the free spots. And the idea behind there is that, you know, what you don't want to do is launch a community that people are paying for and no one's there. I mean, that is not, it's like walking into a room and going, just me then.
Yeah.
And so it's really about creating a community, getting that buzz, making sure it's getting the job done, then opening up the doors that we played. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. So right now, my focus is really those first 100 people. We look like we've got about 25 people since I posted a couple of days ago. So, and that I'm seeing people coming every day. So I'm just kind of posting the word out. And so what you tend to get there is people with high intent. People that have got coming to you going, I need this, and this is why I need it. It's going to help me do this, and I'm experiencing this problem. And for me, it's just great data. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, hopefully when this goes out, I usually put them out pretty quickly because, you know, I don't do barely any editing. It'll just be from the start and end. And that's it. So it'll be up and hopefully you'll get more people following as well. So I'll put the links down in the description in the video and stuff. So, you know, after this call, just send me everything and I'll put it through. But yeah, make sure you're following Memory School. And why wouldn't you? Gee, and LinkedIn and all the other socials. Gee, go for it now. So that's pretty awesome that you're doing that because it really shows, you know, when you do have, because it's really hard. Like you would have done this by yourself. And I know there's someone who's tried to do it yourself. It's bloody hard. But as soon as you get people in there connecting and talking about memory, it's very, I know you become accountable to each other for some reason. And if you've all got a high level of interest, then, you know, oh, maybe I can do this. It gets more exciting when you do it together in a group. And now you've got the technology to make that, you know, happen even better. So it sounds really exciting and promising. And man, jump at the chance when you get a chance.
Yeah, and you're so right. I mean, the other group that I run is all productivity, and that thing you said about accountability, like particularly the memory aspect when you're getting started, because people can sometimes feel like it's a blank slate, a blank page, and you go, oh, what do I do? And so helping people get started is crucial. But once they get going, that accountability you get from other people, positive accountability. I'm not talking about someone going, why are you not doing this? Right? That don't work. At least I've never seen that work, not really work.
No.
Over time, sustained. This is why when I coach people one-to-one, I will say, look, the accountability becomes from you realizing why you want to do what you do and recognizing what you're not doing. So when you rock up to a coaching session, the first question I'm going to ask you is, you know, what's your wins this week? You know, what's your challenges? Did you achieve what you set out to achieve? If you didn't, I'm not going to beat you up for it. And don't you beat yourself up, but do learn. Like genuinely, don't just go, hey, we need to learn from this. No, learn. What do you need to learn?
Yeah.
What can you take away as an insight that you will not just talk about, but you will go follow through on? And if you see the same thing 3 sessions in a row, okay, we need to just stop and dive deep. because something here is not working. We need a different approach. And for me, that's where real accountability comes in, as well as seeing other people on a journey, maybe a little bit further than you are, who have been where you are. I mean, that's quite inspiring, right? Oh, I can do this. I always think, listen, if I can do this, literally anyone can do it. There's no excuses.
It's
Because I was not naturally
I love
great.
that saying. I love that saying, but once you get to a point and you become famous and you say that, people don't believe you. It's like, come on, yeah. But I like what you said about accountability, because it's almost like it's a mindful activity, rather than being sort of automatic. It makes you think, am I ready? Have I got to my goals, or have I done the thing that I needed to do? And that's a mindful thing, because usually we're not mindful. We're, quick to open up a new browser or check our phone when we're bored or things like that, right? But accountability is a mindful thing. And as soon as you're mindful, it's like, have I got it? And gets you to that, next stage where you need to be.
Definitely. Have you watched The Bear? No spoilers, but have you watched The Bear, the series?
Which one? Sorry,
it's called The Bear. It's on Netflix. Go check it out. It is in my mind, one of the best things on TV. Right, the latest series. It's not a spoiler here, but he talks about something that is really. I've talked about this a lot, and then I saw it in The Bear. I went, yes. He has this list of non-negotiables, and for me, when it comes to accountability, having non-negotiables, which is really you prioritizing something in your life. Go, look, this. I'm not going to negotiate around this. I'm going to find a way to make this thing work.
Yep.
When you have that list of non-negotiables, and again, there's a positive frame around these things, you find a way to design your life around this thing. If you want to exercise every morning, go for a walk every morning, it must be a non-negotiable. Now, there's ways you can craft, let's say, tiny habits to make it easier to start the strategies. But once something becomes a non-negotiable, you don't say things like, I don't have the time. Because you find a way to fit this in so you have the time. And it sounds it's kind of like I always think about this as a scale. There's a mindful, there's acknowledgement of what's actually doable. And so there's there's an emotional side over here, but then there's almost like a practical side, and there's a mindset to, you know what, this is a non-negotiable, it's going to happen. And I will focus my energy and attention on how I talk to myself to make that a reality. And that's not wishful thinking. Off the back of that comes some practical strategies. What will I actually do?
I just realized that you're talking about the bear, not the beer. So again, it's an accent thing. I've got the Aussie accent.
It's my Scottish accent. That's what it is.
And I'm thinking, I don't remember a beer.
It's the bear, Tansel.
And someone drinking beer. I'm like, hang on. But then you said non-negotiable. I'm like, it all clicked. I'm like, I remember the season 2. Yes.
Beer versus bear.
But yeah, you're right. Those non-negotiables. It's almost like boundaries, mental boundaries. As soon as you set them, that's it. It's either yes or no. Unless someone else comes in going, hang on, what's this all about? But that's a different story. These are your own non-negotiables, not in the team and stuff. But I know a lot of sporting teams have their non-negotiables as well. Like I've worked with a lot of sporting teams, and you go in and they go, okay, here are our non-negotiables. We'll always look out for each other. We'll always do this and do this play, blah, 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 blah. And it's not just hearsay and talk. They have to actually practice it in their training and all that sort of stuff, which is really quite powerful. And the teams that obviously go through all of this and make sure they stick to the non-negotiables, they're just naturally successful. And teams that sort of, let's not do this, and whatever. They're not very different than the winning teams. It's just they're sort of doing things by halves, or just not. The non-negotiables are negotiated. So yeah.
And sometimes you kid yourself, right? Sometimes you go, oh yeah, I did that. Did you? Did I? Did I really do that? Did I do it to my full capacity? Probably not. And for me, this then comes back to being a pro. And when I think about someone like McKellen, your standards are so high, like no one else could have higher standards for yourself than you have for yourself. And I always remember watching like Gene Kelly and Fred Astaire when I was young and hearing stories about how they were these perfectionists, not in a negative way. Not, I'm a perfectionist, so I don't get anything out. No, no, no. They were genuine perfectionists in terms of their quality bar was off the scale. So if you're going to work with them, you knew you had to raise your game. And it's something that, because I was so inspired by it when I was like 5, 6 years old, I always tried to adopt. So when I was doing a musical or show, or I was doing like something like tap dogs or whatever show I was doing, I would be, I remember Crazy for You, I would just be hours and hours, like just in the studio, tapping away, tapping away, tapping away, until I was not the nicest thing, throwing up, right? But I did that, maybe not the best story to tell, but part of that was building a level of stamina. So when you hit the stage and your adrenaline is like pumping, you know that you ain't going to burn out. You know that you have what the gas in the tank to get that done, playing at a very high physical level. And I used to love that. But that's a mindset that goes with that, going over and above so that you have what it takes when you use it, let's say in a performance capacity.
Yeah, it's that quality component you talked about. And I think Cal Newport talks about in his new book, that slow productivity. And he's got, quality is one of his metrics as well. So do less, but focus on the quality and obsess about the quality as well. So that's where the perfection, not in terms of, like you said, the negative connotation of it, but in terms of just getting your craft so good. And for me, in the early days, it was just about the coaching, because I did the speaking and the seminars and the workshops and everything, and it just wasn't working out. I was doing bits and pieces of everything. And I thought, I'm just going to get rid of all of it and just focus on one thing. And I did that one thing for a very long time and did get really, really good at it because I was seeing the results, right? Now, someone came to me to pass the exam for, what's it called? I'm trying to remember now. There was a master sommelier exam, right? The hardest exam in the world. There's only like an 8% pass rate. And, obviously, learnt the techniques, and he was the only one that passed that year. Now, it wasn't because of the memory techniques. This guy he was obsessing about the quality and everything. And because he was so obsessive, the memory techniques just flowed in with everything in his interests as well. So quality aspect and what you call a pro, this guy is an absolute pro, and that just fed into all that beautifully.
Love it. It's brilliant. Yeah, I'm so big on that idea of quality and bar and professionalism. And I also find that I'll do a lot of career coaching as well, and usually people that are high level up. So the leaders, high stress jobs, lots of anxiety, more work than any human should really have, coming at them. But when you go, you know what? I'm going to live my life. I'm going to live my day to day. So my standards are up here. Then you'll find that you don't get people coming to you going, hey, we should be doing X, Y, and Z. Actually, if you've got micromanaging bots, you'll find that'll happen way less. If that's something, because they're going to go, whoa, they're going to have to try and keep up with you, rather than them somehow trying to control you. Because actually, they're micromanaging because they have some level of fear about themselves and how they're being perceived. There's nothing to do with you.
Okay, I didn't know that, because I had micromanagers, throughout all my jobs, and I was bullied and all that sort of stuff. So hence why I've also gone into all this memory coaching stuff. So yeah, it's amazing how that works. And I only found later on, again, just through sheer memory training and working on the strategies, that, it can really help with being productive and creating focus. And also, look, wow, here is a very busy CEO. How can you help them be more mindful? I'm currently working with a couple of CEOs of a construction company, and amazing people. And, one of the challenges is how do we create, energy, mental energy throughout the day? I get tired, and we're introducing almost like little, I call them little hacks, but little memory, not even memory. It's more of a mind exercise where it's almost like doing meditation, but throughout the day. And you can also combine it with the things you do, like habit stacking, right? And as soon as you're doing these things, by the end of the day, it's like, I've got all this energy. Where did that come from? Well, it's because of these little tools that you've picked up. And I picked that through memory, but it's non-memory related, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's funny how it all comes back to memory, but it's not memory.
It's great. but I completely agree with what you're saying there. And I've always, I say a lot about it. It all comes back to memory, because memory impacts your behavior. It impacts your mindset because it impacts your beliefs. Like memory, really, outside of, let's say, semantic memorizing facts or whatever, right? It infiltrates everything. It influences conditioned responses about behavior design. Priming is about what we pay attention to, the decisions that we make. And so memory impacts everything. But the idea of energy, like I think that for me is one of the most powerful, let's say, strategies to unlock for yourself. What needs to happen for you to create the right level of energy for the task that you want to achieve?
Mhm. I've got this particular exercise. I call it just an energy log, and I get people to write down all the tasks they're doing throughout the day, just generally. And I say, okay, is it giving you energy? Is it taking away energy? Is it neutral type of thing? And then they write it down, and they do that for 2 weeks straight. And then that 2 weeks gives them a lot of data as well. Gives me a lot of data, and say, okay, all the stuff that you're doing, what's taking away energy? Is there any patterns that you can see? And a lot of people find out that they're doing stuff that is just weight draining their energy, like staying in front of the computer maybe for half an hour longer than they should, where
Yeah.
instead they can just go for a walk, or just on their phones, 7, 8 hours a day. And it's like, dude, what are you doing? Type of thing. So that
I love that.
exercise is amazing. And once you get that data, it's like, okay, what can be done now? How could you give
Mm.
yourself more energy? Yes, exercise might take away energy, but it might give you some later on. The foods that you're eating. Did you know the foods that you're eating now is making you more lethargic?
Yeah.
So how can you
But
get
without that
energy?
reflection, you wouldn't know, right? So you get that data in, and you're like, "Oh, is it a drain or a gain? Like, what is going on here?" And you get that analysis, then you go, "All right, okay." Now you can almost, once you can understand why, because lots of people don't know why. Why have I got no energy? Well, that question is going to spiral you down into a bottomless pit,
Mm.
right? Because it's how I'm going to wire because I'm not good enough. Because okay, that question doesn't
Yeah, and,
support you.
and that's amazing what you said. Yeah, because people talk a lot like, oh, I haven't got energy, I haven't got this. That drains mental energy as well.
Huge,
And then
huge.
one of my other clients, they were trying to do their morning exercises, and they just couldn't motivate themselves or complete it, right? Because they had all these thoughts in their head, and they were trying to block away their thoughts. So I said, don't try and block away the thoughts, because that's, using a lot of energy there, and you're trying to use energy while exercising. Let the thoughts come to you and do the exercise
Mm.
anyway. So
Yeah,
it almost seems counterproductive, but now it's a piece of cake, because I'm
it
just
makes
letting it all
perfect
come to me and
sense.
I'm doing it.
Yeah, and you that idea of, if you try and push something away, what happens? When I push, there's resistance. Resistance is a sucky state.
Yeah, what you
It
resist
doesn't move forward.
persists. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
it's like that book, Letting Go, by
Yeah,
David Hawkins. He explains it really well in there as well, and so many other books based on that. And I love this stuff on, just less is more, essentially. And same thing with the
yeah.
mind as well. People think that, because we know memory and we know all these things, our minds must be full, but it's actually not. Right? My mind is, it's filtered, and whenever I want to recall something,
Hmm.
that's when I, do stuff.
Yeah,
Like if
and
someone
that's the
was to
key.
test me, that's the key. Yeah, you're right.
The filter is a key, and for me, priming is the strategy for filtering,
Mm,
and that is about the questions you ask yourself. And if you bring that back to energy, what it really means, and something, I used to have a reputation for having a stupid amount of energy when I was in my 20s. And I used to do two things. One, before a show, and it's something I've continued throughout my whole life, maybe not to the same extent, is I will move my body in a specific way to get energy into it. Because I know that's the quickest way that I'm going to like feel good. And that was always quite natural to me. I used to be a runner when I was a kid and dancing and everything. But the other thing is just I need to talk to myself in a certain way. I need to prime myself in a way so that you do 8 shows a week for a year, the
wow.
same show every single night. And you got to bring, like, you're ill. Well, it doesn't matter what, the show must go on, right? The show must go on. So you bring it, you do it. And therefore you have to have a strategy to get into state. You have to have a
Mm,
strategy to create energy. And what you can't do is go, oh, I feel really ill, I can't do this, or I'm not up for this, or oh, why do I have to say like that? Again, sucks you down. When you ask yourself, okay, what can I do differently tonight? Or what can I improve on tonight? What little thing? And when people used to say to me, don't you get bored? Do you get bored doing the same show every night? It's like, no, how can I get bored? I'm doing the thing I love. Yes. But two, I'm constantly looking how I can improve. We come back to craft. Where, and I did a lot of comedy shows, so you don't play the laugh, you play the character, you play the moment, but there's always like a third eye checking out, going, oh, that went well. You don't recognize it when you're on stage because you're in the moment, but you recognize it when you come off and you go, oh, okay, and then you can improve. Those two things, how you talk to yourself consistently and how you move your body, in my mind, creates so much energy. And obviously you've got all the great habits about food and whatever, right? That feed into it and they're all going to impact. But those two things for me are like, even when you're feeling down, are the game changers in the moment. Yeah. And then the other ones, sleep, nutrition, it's being able to, surround yourself with the right types of people at the right time. Those things will sustain energy over time. But that idea of physicality and how you talk to yourself, they're really simple. If you make those habits, energy goes up.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, it's nice to create a great environment, great people, all of that stuff. But sometimes it doesn't play out that way. And you're stuck. That's why what you say to yourself, and you mentioned there, that's the key, because once you can control the mind, the power of what you say, you could tackle anything. And that's the real test. It's like the saying, the ship is safe at shore, but it's not what it's built for. It's out in the sea sailing and the seas are going like this. Okay, give me your skill now. That's where the real strategies come in. And like what happened to you every night, gee, you must have had so much, resilience as well to sort of, deal with all of that stuff. I know, I say I won't be able to do it, but you learn as well. And you force yourself, and like you said, because you enjoyed it, dopamine's kicking in. You're just like my 4-hour Halo session worked out a way. So you just worked out a way. It was just a bloody long time.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? You come full circle back to memory with this and you will know with some of the stuff that you've done, those stamina events, when you are able to, let's say, memorize something significant, memorize for an hour even. Someone who hasn't done this before, sit down, memorize for an hour, see what happens, see how that feels.
Crazy.
Imagine doing that consistently, and this is how you kind of operate. I mean, right?
It's hard. I mean, I memorized the phone book, as you know, and I had to, because it's funny because memorizing the phone book, I slacked off, right? And I had to literally memorize for maybe 2 hours every day, maybe 3. Sometimes I wouldn't do it. And then because of that, as a result, I had to double up the next day. And it's like, oh no, I got to a stage where I was doing 10 hours a day because I had to catch up. And that was insane, because, and I did it in 2-hour blocks, it's like, usually memorizers, we tend to forget straight after a minute, which we go back and review so many times. So 10 hours of memorizing is insane. And to keep that up for, 24 odd days, which is what I did, very challenging. But what happened was, just like yourself, I learned what to do. And I had to learn in a very short space of time as well, because I was accountable to the whole of Australia, which turned out to be the whole of the world, right? Because they saw this, and this was back before the viral stuff even on the internet. And because it was on YouTube, it went all crazy, apparently. I don't know, but countries picked it up. I suddenly, I was owned by people in the Middle East and other people. It's like, oh no, Tansel's with us. And I'm like, wow, I don't even know these people. And so the news picks up all this stuff. But they talk about the memory side. They don't talk about, the lessons I've learned, because they don't know all that stuff. So for me, memorizing there was memorizing, but for me, it was the big wow, actually, I'm crap at time management. My discipline was poor, my focus was terrible. I couldn't concentrate. And then after maybe a week, I've had to really give in and improve those areas. So, it's amazing what a little exercise like that can take you and push you forward as a person. So, I'm glad
there's a frame of reference there, isn't there? I mean, when you think about doing something as significant as that and all the challenges you overcome, when you then bring that back to, do I have the energy to ask myself an a good optimistic question so I can feel good about this 30-minute task. I don't know about you, for me, that's easier when you get someone to do something significant. If you then compare that to something which is, okay, you've been procrastinating around doing your accounts. In fact, listen, if you just start a timer for 30 minutes, don't even think about what you're going to do. And then you prime yourself with, okay, what's the smallest thing I can do in 30 minutes or even 15?
Yeah.
Once you get started, well, procrastination's in the rear view mirror, it's gone, right?
Yeah.
And you're into it. And if you have these bigger frames of reference that you know you've achieved stuff like this, you write a book that's, pretty significant as well, right?
Yeah.
There's certain behaviors and habits and resilience you need to actually be consistent enough to do that stuff. And then it all kind of pays off. And sometimes when you do procrastinate, reminding yourself that, I've memorized a telephone book before.
That's another mindful activity though. And that's very hard for a lot of people to actually be mindful of that fact. So if it happens, great. If it doesn't, just get into that robotic state. And the key thing that you said is it's people, yes, they procrastinate, but it's the stories they tell themselves in their head. If they just get to the task, then all is forgiven. They'll just do it. So I have a rule, and I'm sure it's probably in all the books and anything. I call it the 1 minute rule, right? So, and this rule came up because I used to get a lot of people saying, I'm trying to read, I can't read books, blah, 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 blah. Not because they can't actually read, but they can't finish reading the books. So and I said, well, just go and read for 1 minute. And they go, what? You set a timer, go read for 1 minute. So I go, okay. So they'll start reading for 1 minute and they realize they're 10 minutes in and go, okay, I get it now. So it's not about reading for 1 minute, it's getting to the task. As soon as you're at the task, you can go for as long as you want. Right? So that 1 minute rule is being
and it feels counterintuitive, right? It feels counterintuitive because people associate the end value. If you look at any kind of behavior design and, the idea, I've worked with BJ Fogg like for years, I trained with BJ Fogg, and the idea of just make things tiny, right? But that actually is actually quite counterintuitive to a lot of people because they go, listen, I want to read for an hour. And you go, yeah, I know you want to read for an hour. Great. Don't let the fact that you want to read for an hour stop you reading for 1 minute. Because if you read for 1 minute, you're much more likely to read for an hour than if you go, I don't have time to read for an hour, or I've got to read for an hour, because now that feels really hard. But once you read for a minute, you're off.
Yeah.
Procrastination again is behind you. Now you're reading.
Absolutely. You're right. And that's what I say to all my clients. I'm like, instead of blocking things for an hour or two in your calendar, just put it for like a minute or 5 minutes or odd. I say give odd numbers. Do it for 7 minutes or 13 minutes, 22, 23 minutes, whatever. And I go, hang on, why? And I call this the Netflix effect, right? Because what happens is your brain wants to complete things, right? There is a scientific word, but I don't remember it, right? There is a scientific word for it. What happens is that you do a task, and usually a task in 30 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours, the nice, round, beautiful numbers, right? But if you get to, say, 21 minutes or 13, what happens is that you sort of get to 13 minutes or an odd number, or even just a quarter of the way, doing a task, and then you leave it. What happens is that the brain wants to finish that task off. It wants closure. So you end up coming back. So it's better to do a task in a quarter or something that's odd, right? Instead of doing the full task, because then your brain say, you know what, you're going to come finish that thing because I'm not going to be happy until I finish it. Whereas if you set a full task for 1 hour, right, it's easier to procrastinate, saying, I'll leave that to the side. So that's been a game changer for me and for everyone that's been doing it. Yeah, it's quite fun.
Great.
The old Netflix effect. The reason why I call it Netflix is when you get to the end, there's no bloody closure. So you have to hit next, what's the next episode? And then what's the next episode? No bloody, and people watching will probably cringe or whatever, but I've just started watching Prison Break. This is, I didn't watch it back in the day. I've just started watching it, and
classic.
Man, 45 minutes goes like 5 minutes, seriously. And I'm always hitting next episode. And then next thing you know, half a day's gone. I was like, what? I haven't actually
Well,
done any work today.
similarly, I've started watching Breaking Bad. No spoilers. I'm literally, me, my middle kid, we're on the second series. We're on it now. And it's like,
Wow.
why did I never watch this before? I must be the only person on the planet who hasn't seen Breaking Bad.
Yeah, it's an insane show, but yeah, you get it, don't you? You get to towards the end, and it's like, yeah, but I want to know what happens. Come on, so you hit the next. So it's that. If you can create that for your habits, for your, work, you're essentially hacking the brain. You don't even have to, motivate yourself. I mean, that's you don't
Yeah.
need the motivation. You just need those little hacks, and you're set.
It's the idea that you want to put easy prompts in front of motivated people. So that's what the next button does at the end of, or the rolling on. It's an easy prompt. Hey, do the next one. Yeah, yeah. In fact, Netflix, it just rolls on. You don't even do nothing, right? But it's there. But if you put an easy prompt, something that's easy to do in front of someone who's motivated to achieve something, it's going to happen. And then off they go.
Yeah.
Which is why all these addictive products are created, right? That actually distract us. And now people are looking for the solution, which is how to become more focused. I don't know, turn Instagram off.
Yeah, I love looking at these products and saying, how can I use that now to my advantage? This is how they design Netflix. Can I do that for my kind of stuff? And I love that. I always look at these things and say, how can I hack that? And I always look at, what's convenient and what's inconvenient. And sometimes you can, introduce convenience as in, like, if you want to exercise, for example, you have your shoes, just under your bed or whatever, and your clothes. But inconvenience works just as well. Like, you get yourself a really crappy smartphone, that's got really terrible battery life, or you get yourself
makes it harder, right? Now you've got effort.
Adding friction to that effort. So you get a laptop that 2 hours battery life. It's chunky as a beast, and it's essentially only getting you to do what you need to do because you don't want to look at it anymore. Things like that. I find exciting. And once you know how to use convenience and inconvenience, then you start almost doing it naturally rather than having to think about being productive.
Yeah, so true. Design your life and the behaviors to have that friction or making it easy, and there's right kind of prompts, and then things happen for you, right?
Yeah,
it's more implicit,
by design.
It's unconscious.
That's right. I mean, I always think it's always conscious competence. It's never really unconscious competence, because you always have to make some, like memory, for example. It's never unconscious. Like, I'll forget anything, if I don't use memory techniques. So I always have to make an effort. So it's always a conscious thing. But if you have certain environmental things, sometimes you can automatically get into those habits just by sheer convenience or inconvenience. Yeah.
You know what? I think obviously you'll have heard, like, probably a huge amount of people saying this to you, but it's the one thing why people forget names. It's the obvious one. It's the one that you get asked about a lot. But for me, it's more about the priming effect that happens before. And I think this is probably an unconscious habit that you must create consciously first. And so that's the idea of, after I see someone, after I meet someone for the first time, I'm going to ask myself what's interesting about them, for example. And I'm going to give myself a little celebration. There's like a little tiny habit recipe there. Initially, it's conscious, and then it starts to happen without you. It literally becomes a proper habit where it's happening unconsciously. And when that happens, now what's happening is you're not really asking yourself a question. You're just paying attention, and then you do the conscious aspect of, picture, the association. So, you all the other steps, right? But that one there is a great example of how to get traction on some of these things. I remember working with a guy he was high up, and it was an energy company. 75 people in his team didn't know anyone, forgetting boardroom members, and it was a problem. And so just before getting into any techniques, just giving him a strategy where he would unconsciously start to pay attention. And you go, oh, and now he becomes conscious. You go, oh, I'm paying attention. Well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a big one. Yeah, I did a video on it recently, actually, on my YouTube channel, on remembering to remember. because how do you do that
Yeah.
all of a sudden? And memory triggers,
Mm.
I call them. I mean, the priming, all that's really the key. Like if you're conscious of it, you'll get it. I had a friend who used to run camps, youth camps, and he said he used to remember all these 60 students that he had in the camp. I said, what techniques did you use? Just no memory techniques. I'm like, what do you mean? And he said, no, I just cared. I'm like, wow. So he was using
Yes.
care as his
Yes.
prime. I'm like, well, that makes
Yeah.
sense. I would have, as a memory guy, I would have thought, your name's Bill. Okay, Bill, holding a dollar bill. But he was using his heart-based, care
Yeah.
thing. I'm like, okay, I get it now. I get it.
You
And
know why I
I learned
love
so
that?
much from him.
You know why I love that? My mum is phenomenal at names. And, since I've been doing this stuff last year, she uses a lot of this stuff now. However, she was always brilliant at names. And it was because of what you just said. She just cared and was so curious about people. She would know not just the person's name, but everything about them, their family, what kids they had, what their kids were doing, what their friends did. I was like, what? Even now, I'm still astonished. It's the 70s now. And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah. And I say it to her, because she'll say, oh, my memory is not what. And I'll go, you're amazing at this. Like, you're literally phenomenal. And just that natural thing. But it's again, it's the mindset, that thing of caring. And there's probably a bunch of ingredients here. You care, you're interested, you're curious, you're playful, you get into these states, and your brain is allowed to do what it will naturally do.
Yeah.
And it just performs.
And you think about it, what is care? It's a mindful act.
Mm.
I'm here for a reason. So he's there in front of all these 60 people saying, I'm here for a reason. I want to make a change in these people's lives. So you're already starting at that base. And then when you're connecting with these people, you're connecting in the heart space, not just the brain space. So you're really like remembering from the heart, so to speak. And
Yeah.
that's where the real connection comes. As soon as you do that, it's amazing. And, as a memory guy, I would have gone, oh yeah, connect here, link here, do that there. And wouldn't have known nothing about the person. Yeah, you can remember facts, but what does that really mean?
Yeah.
So I love this memorization by heart thing. And when I do work with speakers and, show them how to remember, all the lines type of stuff that you do, right? You've written a whole book on it. I do a lot of stuff just based on context rather than remembering stuff because, yeah, you can remember everything perfect, but what's the message you're delivering? How are you getting people to encode what you're saying into their brain, but also feel what you're saying as well? Because if you can make people feel, they're going to remember it. They may not remember it here, but they'll remember it in the heart. So I just found that really fascinating. Once you start getting into that realm, it's night and day difference.
I think we're very similar in that aspect. And obviously, like you say, I wrote a book for actors and I work with a lot of actors or people doing talks. And I never start with memory techniques because that's not where you start. I'd obviously start with things like priming, etc. But that idea of connecting, don't memorize the words. Leave any thought about memorizing on the table. Connect with what you're reading. Why are you saying it? I mean, as an actor, it should be pretty obvious, right? Why are you saying what you're saying? What is your objective in that scene? What are you wanting to achieve? What's the emotional pattern that's going on? When you just think about these things in this way, everything starts to connect. What it also does is feed you ideas later on for what you'll create, let's say, on your memory palace and the images you'll use to kind of create a little structure. And that actually brings me back to something I've thought about memory palaces for many, many years. And I'm interested to know what you think about this. But the way I've always seen memory palaces is that, yes, it's a memory tool, but it's not. It's what it really is a thinking tool. Because once you create, let's say, a map of a talk or a scene in your mind, or, it could be a bunch of product data or whatever you do. Once you create that map, it acts as a thinking tool because you ask yourself, what does that picture represent? Oh, that represents what I'm going to say in this line, or what I want to say in this talk. And it allows you to think more deeply. And so you don't need to use 100 different images. You have one image which acts as a trigger. And then you have the next image which acts as a trigger. And in order to get it from your head into your body, you're thinking about, what do I really want to say here? Why do I want to say it? And actually, when I work with actors on that strategy, what they find is where you start is through improvisation. But improvisation in context of what you know you want to say. Forget the actual words. That happens, and then you can sprinkle the perfection, the word for word on top of that. And it also means you have a safety net. So when you dry or someone else dries and you've got to pick it up, you know what that scene is about. You know the emotional beats in that scene. You know that even if I don't say something, I go off track and I bring someone back, that's okay because I know what this is about and it's in my body now. Because when you're on stage, you don't have your pictures, you just know it.
Yeah.
And and the acting game has changed a lot because when I was doing it, you would get an audition, you would go into a casting room. Yes, it might be tomorrow and you get your sides and you'd have to memorize that stuff. But nowadays, it's just like you're on set, you got 20 minutes, get that stuff in your head. You've got something tomorrow. Everyone's self-taping everywhere. The amount that you have to consume as an actor has increased exponentially. And if you're an older actor, you're in your 50s now, in your 60s, and maybe you feel you're not quite as sharp, and then the game has changed, and now you start to lose confidence, and now you've got two things going on there. It's but, I use the acting world there, but you can apply that to pretty much anything.
Exactly, and I've worked a ton with actors as well. I mean, all memory people have at some stage, I guess. And I used to actually, before memory, I used to do acting, so it was quite fun. But I was terrible with lines, with memory and everything else. But the key thing there is, like you said, knowing, not necessarily memorizing. Because if you know your stuff, like the intention and knowing what the message is, and just knowing context, that forms a good foundation. And let's say you did memorize everything verbatim, word for word. If you made a mistake, you're not going to remember the rest, right? You're just going to be stuck at that point and it's all over. Whereas if you understand what's going on, and when I did acting, that's what I had to learn as well, like be in the moment, that my teacher called it. So,
Yeah.
but it's also, I remember because I used to play guitar in a band, right? And when we used to perform, I never used to focus on playing the guitar, like what note I'm going to play. I used to focus on, well, how am I going to project, myself and project the music and stuff. So it's a completely different, like the message is projected, the acting, the theater, the entertainment is projected, not can I do this perfectly? You don't care. That perfection, it's not for you, it's more for, it's everything is for the people. That's how I see it, and we're just doing it because we love it.
You know what? If you're an actor and you're on stage or you're in front of a camera and you're thinking about what your lines are, something has went wrong in your process sometimes before. Yeah. Because what's really happening is I'm listening to what you're saying as an actor and I'm just responding to it. It's a listening game. And I hear it and I know yes, I've memorized my stuff. I've done the work, but I just know what I should say to you. And it will just happen to be the right line. And there's there should, I think when you experience that state of flow as an actor where you come off stage and you go, that was great, but I don't know if I can replicate it. There's an unpredictability in the moment. There's almost that feeling of you don't know what you're going to say next. That's electric. You watch, you see actors who work this way, actresses, and you're like, wow, she's amazing. How is she? Wow, like crazy. She doesn't know what she's going to do next, and it just happens.
Yeah, that's how I approach my YouTube videos. Actually, I don't script anything at all. I just pick a topic and go for it. Now, they may not be the greatest things ever. I actually don't care because it's testing my skill and ability, and it's going to be different every single time, right? So what I'm doing is I'm practicing my skill. Again, my intention is how can I get this in the best possible way to people, and I'm working on my communication skills and everything at the same time, my ums and ahs and all of that, but at the same token, I'm practicing like what you said. It's electric at the end of it because you go, wow, how did this ever come out of this? I wasn't planning on doing this, but I got this, gold story coming out. Wait, I didn't even think of this. This wasn't even on my mind, but now I've got it out there. So, and that's what's electric when those sort of moments happen and you can't execute it again, but you know that you could do something like that again as well.
We should do this again. Definitely.
We definitely should, but yeah, I do believe we have spoken for quite a bit. I think, well, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on, and if there's anything that you need from us, from the community, let us know, but also how people can reach you as well. So yeah, tell us what you've got going on. Where can they reach you? Memory School, all of that. Let us know what's happening.
Yeah, so I guess right now, because I'm building Memory School in public right now, go to my LinkedIn, if you got LinkedIn, and just reach out a connection. Say that you saw me here, just so I know like where you come from. Connect with me there, and then I can hook you up with Memory School. Depending on when people see this, the 100 spots might be gone. I do have those 100 spots initially, but then Memory School will be up and running beyond that. I'm launching it within 30 days, next 20 days. Otherwise, primefocus.coach is my other work. That's my productivity. That's my coaching stuff. People can just go there and reach me there. And then when I go live with Memory School, it's going to be on school.com/memory school. I'll ping you the link, when we go live with it. So
that's awesome.
And wow. You can pop it on there, and people can just, they can even just go there and connect with me, and I'll give them some instructions on what to do. So I'll pop you the links.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much once again. Thanks for sharing all those stories with us. I mean,
thank you too. Yeah, I love this.
It's all. We definitely have to do this again. I mean, I love chatting with other actors. We're just actor and a metal guitarist. That's all we are doing.
That's all it is. That's what it really is, right?
That's what it really is, right?
If we had a couple of beards here, I would just be like,
That's it. So we'll get this out hopefully in the next couple of days, because like I said, I only just chopped the end bit and the start and just upload. I don't even put proper thumbnails these days because it's pretty cool. I enjoy it. But yeah, thank you so much, and wish you all all the very best with what you're doing. Obviously, you're making a huge dent in the universe with all your stuff, so which is great in a positive way. Not dent as in anyway. That's it. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thanks, Tansel. I really loved it. You too.
Thanks, buddy.